Not all abusive relationships are romantic, and here is my story. Okay, I think I should start off at the beginning. In 7th grade, I started going to a new school, and that meant leaving all my friends from district behind and starting anew. Long story short, the previous year I was still in district and had started middle school. Unfortunately, a new principal started working there the same year that I started. She cared more about herself than about the kids in the school, and knowing that I wasn't going to get the help I needed, another long story short, I have a plethora of mental problems, including Asperger's, ADHD, and anxiety. AAA problems, baby! They had to get me out of there and into a better school. Unfortunately, the school wasn't 100% what it was made out to be and would get worse as the years went by, but that's a whole nother story altogether. Basically, I had a pretty difficult time making friends there because of all the sadists I went to school with that loved seeing me miserable. So I did the only thing I could. I got into social media. My social media adventure took off with DeviantArt. January 2006. Know who I was stupidly obsessed with at the time? Syndrome from The Incredibles. Yeah, mostly due to this friendship. Looking back, I'm not particularly proud of those days. Yeah. If I could, I'd erase those days out of existence for eternity. Not only did they make me unpopular and obnoxious, but they also caused me to enter a really toxic friendship. I posted my art and a lot of people seemed to like it, but I kind of snubbed those people because, you know what my main goal was at the time? I wanted to be friends with the Syndrome Club's moderator. Looking back, those people that commented on my art, they were such wonderful people. I'll always feel bad about snubbing them for so long, because I thought that being friends with the moderator of an online club would be a big achievement for me to feel good about. Don't ask why. I was just afraid of being friends with losers like me. I took one look at the club's moderator's page and I saw, wow. She's my age, we like the same things, and she's from the United Kingdom. Even back then, I loved British culture, and I still do to this day, so I thought, yeah, we're going to bond well. We're going to give her the fake name Ruby. Now, I need to give some backstory on her. She was obsessed with Syndrome, just like me, but she hated Mirage. So much so that she made an OC named Surdoc to pair up with Syndrome. And here's her profile. Sapphire blue eyes, blood red hair, has so many powers because she's an ancient Egyptian kind of super known as an Alpha Omega. One can only be born every 50,000 years. Yeah. If that doesn't scream Mary Sue, then I don't know what does. On top of that, to her, her OC was a real person. If you didn't like Surdoc, you would get it from her. Even if someone wanted to give her some constructive criticism on her, she would read them the riot act. Also, she hated a lot of things and only seemed to like things that weren't usually held in high regard. At one point, she had a friggin' crush on goddamn Megatron from Transformers. But back to me. One day I made a now deleted account on MSN Messenger so that I could chat with Ruby. Things started out alright. I finally had a friend who was the head of a fan club. There's something I can feel great about. Every day after school I would get right on my computer and we would roleplay together with our OCs. Things were alright, times are fun, and then one day conflict arose with her, but not between us. Apparently someone who I'm now really good friends with told Ruby that her OC was forcing Syndrome to be with her. And oh boy, did she explode at that. Ruby started making all these claims that the girl was the worst out of everyone, was up on cloud 9, and had to respect her almighty Alpha Omega Base Queen OC. Yeah, that's literally what she called Surdoc. Basically, as I said before, she couldn't take any form of criticism of her OC. This was around the time when, well, she started getting a little, how do I say this, pushy. One day, I wanted to go see a movie with my parents, and what does Ruby do when I want to go offline? She starts whining, begging me to stay online, telling me that she's going to be lonely when I go off, making me feel bad for wanting to have a life outside of chatting with her. Now, I was scared of losing a friend that could help me feel good about myself, so I complied and just told my parents to go without me. I thought this was going to be a one-time thing, but then every day after that, she would beg me to stay online. Why? Because I was one of the 2 people that actually supported her and her OC and didn't have a negative thing to say about her and catered to her fantasies without any questioning whatsoever. Too long didn't ring version because I was compliant. Not to mention, whenever I tried to have a real conversation with Ruby, whether it be about something else I was getting into at the time or my life in general, if it wasn't one of the few things she was actually interested in, she would say her catchphrase, "Boring," and we would start talking about whatever she wanted to hear. I was not allowed to have my own identity around her. I was not allowed to bring up anything that she didn't like, even if I didn't know that she didn't like it. Yet, she was always forcing her own interests upon me, no matter how much I protested. Confession, I hated the movie Spirited Away for a few years because of this. She loved the movie and wanted me to love it too, so she forced me to watch it. Years later, I started watching it on my own, and I loved it. I still do to this day, but my favorite Ghibli film will always be Howl's Moving Castle. One day, I actually confronted Ruby about how I was being forced into certain things. Her reaction? Ruby freaks out and goes off on me, telling me that I was being difficult, and I backed down. I decided not to press the issue any further. I needed her in my life. She had what I thought was an accomplishment, and meanwhile, I was being bullied at school, and nobody would help me. I had no self-worth. I was suicidal. She was the only thing that was keeping me alive. Even though every day she demanded that I chat with her and would get angry when I didn't come online. And if I couldn't chat with her because I had to go to a psychologist appointment or a family gathering, note, I hated being forced to go to those when I was little, she would get angry at me and expected me to magically be available whenever she wanted me to be. I'm a loser, not a magician. One time, Ruby actually forced me into doing a childbirth roleplay with Surdok, something that I wasn't comfortable with. Ruby wanted to roleplay Surdok giving birth to Syndrome's child and made not just the birth, but the pregnancy as detailed as she possibly could. Yeah, as I said before, I went to a lot of psychologist appointments at the time, and she told me that only psychopaths see psychologists. She should look at herself in the mirror. I wasn't her friend. I was her fantasy slave. I wasn't allowed to be an individual and have a life outside of chatting with her. I felt trapped, but hey, at least I have my little bit of self-worth. I was always rationalizing her behavior, and I wanted to believe that she was a wonderful person when, in reality, she was immature, self-centered, and thought she was better than everyone else. She was a clone of Akai Dahlia. She was someone that Blockbuster critic would probably have a field day with. And while she saw me as her only friend, I was more of her compliant prisoner. This is why I find it difficult to say no to my friends and stick up for myself. This is why I feel like I have to agree with my friends on whatever they say. This is why I feel like I have to copy my friends' opinions. Because she would always get on my case if I wasn't compliant with her. Eventually, we drifted apart. She got into Transformers while I started getting into Johnny Depp and later on Queen. Eventually, I found Anna, and she was someone who was even more obsessed with Queen than I was. She became my new best DeviantArt friend, and I'm still friends with her to this day. Hi, Anna. She was basically the opposite of what Ruby was. She liked me for who I was, she was grounded in reality, she had other friends to chat with besides me, and she was well liked on DeviantArt because she drew, and still does draw, phenomenal artwork. I know she's kind of embarrassed with some of the art she did back then, but even back then, her art was impressive. I could actually be myself around her without having to walk on eggshells. Every now and then she'd get into one of her moods, but rather than take her anger out on me, she would more so only vent to me, and I would be there to listen. I soon got myself out of the toxic environment that is known as my high school, and I started going to college. I started meeting decent people at long last. From there, my self-worth exploded. People admired me for a lot of the things I did, and I realized I didn't need to have a lot of friends or friends with a high position, as long as I have people who support me, and I'm surrounded by decent people. That's all that matters. Eventually, I did get revenge on Ruby. Long story short, she hasn't changed a bit. Not surprised.